Hey everybody, we're going to be doing a little painting video showing how to make a cloaking effect on a TIE Interceptor. Now normally we'd be doing this on a TIE Phantom, but since the Phantom is not available yet, we're using the TIE Interceptor as our example. This could also be the other stealth system. This could represent having the stealth system on there. But as you see, I'm using Vallejo Air color to brush on some black to represent the areas of the ship that are currently cloaked or nearly so. And this is the point at which you're sort of choosing how much of the ship is going to have that overall cloaking effect. The main reason I use the air color for this is that I like using fairly thin paints while I'm painting, and the air colors are sort of a nice way to get that without having to mix it yourself. And, you know, frankly, because it was the handiest black that I had on me at the time, so more than anything else, I think that's why I'm using it. But it turned out fine. I mean, I don't think I've actually ever brush painted this particular color before, but I do like how it turned out. Yeah, so here I'm just making sure that I get good coverage over the area that's going to be the cloaked area. By the way, in case you're curious, there's no real reason that I'm wearing latex gloves, but so don't feel like it's something that that I necessarily recommend doing on a regular basis. Sometimes it's nice when you know, if your hands have paint on them and you're afraid of transferring that paint onto the models, well, you should either wash your hands or put on some gloves. So I think we'll just go ahead and speed up the rest of this video so that you can you don't have to wait through the entire process. Okay, with that done, we're going to move on to using Signar Blue Base as it's kind of a glow color. It's sort of a transition color and it's going to mark the area between cloaked and not cloaked. I actually wish I'd picked a different color, perhaps a Citadel base, because this P3 color is kind of transparent, and sometimes my experience with P3 paints is very hit or miss. Sometimes it covers really well, sometimes it doesn't cover so well, and this one didn't cover all that well. So it's okay because this is a transition color. In a way, you can think of it as almost like the glow. So it's okay that if it doesn't do full coverage. And what I'm doing here is I'm just painting a fairly sloppy line between the painted and the black areas of the ship. This is going to serve as the darkest of the colors that I'm going to be using in this area. And the whole effect is going to be one of this kind of almost lightning bolt-like effect. And so there's 3-4 colors in this. There's this color, then there's a little brighter layer, then there's a much brighter layer, and then there's a final highlight. So this is just the base. So we'll go ahead and speed through this a bit, and so that we can work our way to the next point. So one thing I wanted to point out is what I'm doing right here is, and although my hand seems to be covering some of this, I apologize for that, I've been extending the effect into the painted area, and later on I decided that, you know what, I didn't want to do that, and so I used some airbrush, not airbrush cleaner, yeah, actually airbrush cleaner to actually remove those lines off of the back. So now we're transitioning into the next highlight color, which is Signar Blue Highlight. And I have kind of the same complaints with this color as I did with the last color. But again, it's okay. This is just, again, we're building up the glow color. So what I'm doing is matching the lines that I created initially but trying to make sure that I keep it within the dark blue so that we have sort of a staged highlight going on. This is actually a little harder than it might otherwise seem, because it's very hard in some places to see where that blue actually is. I think it's actually easier to see on the video than it is IRL, if you will. And it's probably a decent point to note. You can actually kind of see me doing a bit of a dabbing motion here, and what I'm kind of doing is preparing this to look like a lightning bolt effect. So I don't want a very hard line. I want it to be soft. I want it to be kind of broken as it goes, and I certainly don't want it to be very straight. So although I'm not doing it a lot here, I think you'll see it in the next portion that I'm doing much more dabbing than brushing. So we don't have too much more time left on this. What I started doing on the rest of this video was doing the inner portions off camera, because they were a lot harder to do and took a lot longer, and then doing the outer portions on camera so that you could actually see what was going on. I think there you can kind of see that I've gotten rid of those lines into the painted area of the ship. Although I can kind of see where one remains. I'm going to have to go back and check that. I might need to touch that up after the fact, because at this point I've already painted this. I liked the idea of extending those lines out to the tips of the panels, so that I was actually going to be still emphasizing the shape of the model. I think there's something to be said about disguising those lines as well. But I wanted to highlight them, and as you can see here, I'm doing the same thing on the cockpit. I didn't want to completely lose the cockpit, so I'm adding some blue into those cockpit lines, and they'll get a lot of emphasis at the end as well. And again, there's definitely two ways you could go with it, and one would be to create a more defined camouflage where you're really breaking up the outlines, and I think that could look really cool as well, because then the ship, the remaining painted portions of the ship, the part that has the original paint, will pop that much more. So here I'm now working with light blue, and this was a mix of the last blue color that I used, the Signar blue highlight, and then a lot of white, and made really almost like a powder blue. I'm not going to give you a recipe for that, because in a way it's just sort of a whatever feels right to you. And I really suck at recipes, so there's no way for me to give you exactly what I did. Now here you can really see the dabbing as I paint. You know, like I'm painting in either very small strokes or just dabbing strokes all the way through, and that's to give me that almost jagged line look. And again, you want that line as close to the center of your previous blue lines as you can get. It's kind of hard to do as it gets tighter and tighter. But you can really see that as you get that light blue in there, it really starts to feel very electrical, which is definitely what I was going for. I've used this technique for power swords on 40K models in the past. This would also be an interesting effect to do if you wanted to make a ship being hit by an ion cannon. This would be a good effect for that, minus the black portions, of course. Trying to get around some of the detail is kind of a pain, and the panel detail, I probably should have mentioned this earlier, but trying to paint a smooth line on those textured panels is just a huge pain in the butt. If the paint is too thin, it wants to go everywhere. If it's too thick, it doesn't want to go into the recesses. Yeah, no fun whatsoever. Actually, at this point in the process is probably when it's the easiest, because you don't want to have a hard line in there anyway, so it's not too bad. I really like how that looks in the profile. I'm not done yet, but I can already see how well it's going to look. And I think it's pretty cool. It'll look great on the table. Just making sure I didn't miss anything. All right, so as you can see, I've mixed up a much lighter blue. I was like super, super pale blue. And this is going to be our final highlight, by the way. You can see how I added the previous blue onto the cockpit there so that we can still see it. So the goal here with this color is really to find those points where the arcs of electricity meet and just provide a little alternate highlight there. And not just in those places, but every now and then there'll be just like an emphasis. It's best to put it where those three connectors are, or where there's going to be a bend in the arc. Those are all good places to put it. You don't want to overdo it, otherwise what was the point of the previous color? And so you also want this to be a fairly bright color as well, because there has to be some good contrast. And you can see there's another sort of connection point there. And sometimes it's just a dab, sometimes it's just a single point, and sometimes you're drawing it up into the various um, points of the kind of crossroads where those arcs are meeting. This is probably one of the fastest parts of the whole paint job because there's just not too much to do here. But you can really see it there. You can really see how that's starting to provide a lot more character to those lines and a lot more of that electrical feel that we're looking for. And I'm kind of going back periodically and re-hitting places that I've already done just to make sure that I'm bringing out sort of the maximum effect of that color. All right, looks good. All right, and the last thing here, I would call this an unoptional part of this. You can see already what I've done on the insides there. I've started adding stars, and so the idea is that you can already see through those portions of the wings to the star field beyond. And this is tough. This is actually not an easy thing to do. And again, we end up fighting with the texture, especially on those panels. But I'm just doing dots, and they're not white, although they're going to look white. But it is essentially the lightest color that I used for the arcs, for the electrical arcs. And then maybe a little bit lighter color, and then some of the darker color to create variations for my dots, because I don't want them all to necessarily be uniform. And for me, for my taste, I want these dots to be as fine as possible and still be visible. But every now and then I'm getting some that are bigger than I'd like. But there can be variation. It's okay. It's not a big deal. And you can kind of go nuts with this too if you want to create a really elaborate star field. You could do that with lots of color and nebula and whatever else you want to put in there. I wanted to keep it fairly simple. And again, it could even just be black. I think it would look pretty good just black as well. So there's a lot of possibilities here depending on your tastes and your style. All right. Well, let's speed this up to the end, and then we'll show you the final pictures.